All right. Very, very high tech. How are you, Jonathan?
Good. Okay. So I believe we are now live. So uh take it away.
All right. You can and you can hear me okay and see me okay. We're all good. Great. Well, it's good to see everyone and good to be with everyone. I thought what I would do is just kind of quickly introduce myself, tell you a little bit about me, why I'm running for lieutenant governor, and then would really hope to mainly take questions and just have a little bit of a conversation with everyone. So first, I really want to thank you for having me to Boston Ward 4. It's fun to be with you and looking forward to doing these in person very soon. It looks like hopefully we're going to be getting to that point in a hopefully in a very soon period. And I'm really looking forward to that. I also want to thank you for your kind of activism and energy and the work you do in between elections to keep our party structure here in Massachusetts so strong. I got my start in politics through my local committee in Long Meadow, Massachusetts, 90 miles west of where you are right now. I remember actually that the school principal of my high school, the public high school I attended, called all the students in for an assembly, brought us all into an auditorium and lined a whole bunch of teachers up at the front of the room and said that they weren't coming back next year because of budget cuts that had been made in the building I now work in. And I remember feeling really angry, frankly, that a bunch of 14 and 15 and 16-year-olds should be asked to pay the price for bad decisions, frankly, that have been made somewhere else. So we went out and we organized. We put together a Proposition 2.5 override campaign, which I'm sure some of you have been involved with in the past. Went out, knocked on doors, handed out leaflets, do all the things you do in an election like that. I remember sitting in the town hall as the clerk was counting the ballots and the clerk announcing that the vote had passed. And one of the teachers who was sitting next to me, she had literally been clutching a pink slip that the town had issued her, literally ripped it up, threw it in the garbage because the vote passing had meant that her job had been saved. It was an early lesson for me that despite the messiness and the frustrations of politics, it still remains one of the most powerful ways to make a difference. So from there, I caught the bug and I went to work with a skinny guy with a funny name from Illinois named Barack Obama. And my job for him, my big break for him was carrying his suitcases all around New Hampshire during the first in the nation primary back in 2007 and 2008. Ultimately traveled with him to 47 states and 6 countries and ended up working 40 feet from the front door of the Oval Office as the assistant to David Axelrod, who was the president's senior advisor at the time. I was there for the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and for the passage of the Affordable Care Act, worked with Elizabeth Warren and her team on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and Wall Street reform. Met LeBron James, met the starting lineup of the Red Sox. There were definitely some perks to working there. But I was eager to get home and I was eager to get back to Massachusetts. Probably for similar reasons to why all of you are on a Zoom call on a Tuesday night when you certainly have other things competing for your time. Because I felt very strongly that change does not come from a state house or from a city hall or even from a White House, even a Democratic White House. Change comes to those places, right? From mobilizing and organizing in between elections. And so for the last 8 years in the state Senate, I've been working on a set of issues critical to all of us and a set of issues that I'm committed to being a partner to our next governor on tackling. At the height of the pandemic back in 2020, when our small businesses in particular were getting crushed, our minority-owned businesses, our immigrant-owned businesses in particular, were getting decimated by both the virus itself and the measures to contain the virus. I led the effort to put a $600 million rescue package together that got aid out the door to hundreds of businesses across our state. We wrote into the legislation that the money first had to go to our smallest micro businesses and businesses owned by minorities, immigrants, and in our lowest income zip codes, because those were the communities hardest hit by the virus. We didn't trust Governor Baker to do that himself, so we quite literally wrote that into the legislation as a criteria for the grants. We helped keep hundreds of bodegas, dry cleaners, hair salons, nail parlors, small community restaurants open through the height of the pandemic and have allowed them to recover now. At the height of the opioid pandemic back in 2015, I worked closely with the Attorney General's office to write a bulk purchasing program for Narcan. Boston is one of the participants in that program. We helped bring the price of Narcan down by more than 2/3. For people who are unfamiliar with Narcan, it's an overdose reversal drug. If a school nurse shows up at the scene of a young student who's overdosed and has Narcan, the person is likely to live. If they show up and they don't have Narcan, the person is unlikely to live. We helped get hundreds of doses of Narcan into the hands of social workers, community center workers, healthcare workers, first responders, school nurses, police and firefighters, EMT workers in every corner of our state. A DPH report came out about that program that showed that it helped save potentially hundreds of lives. And as we've seen the scourge of hate crimes and violence against our minority communities, you've seen record increases in violence against the Asian American community, the Black community. You've seen record increases in anti-Semitism in recent years, the LGBT community, our Muslim community, and really on and on. I set up a new program, a nonprofit security grant program that has helped get millions of dollars out the door to community organizations across our state that face a heightened risk of domestic terrorism and hate crimes violence. And for the last 7 years, I've been working to connect our entire state by rail from Pittsfield to Boston. This project, frankly, was dismissed as a bit of a fantasy when I first worked on it back in 2014, but we worked with community groups, organizations up and down the rail link to fight for this project, including the Boston City Council and a whole bunch of community organizations in Boston that understand that statewide rail investment is just as important for communities in Boston as it is for communities in Worcester or Springfield or Chester or Pittsfield. Why? Well, first of all, it would clean our air. It would be one of the single biggest reductions in greenhouse gas emissions the state has ever undertaken, taking thousands of cars off the road. It would unlock the potential for thousands of units of new housing, especially transit-oriented development clustered around transit that's sustainable and affordable for families. At a time when we know rents and housing prices are crushing people, certainly in Boston and statewide. It would also create thousands and thousands of jobs, especially in areas of our state, including in Boston, that have been left out of the high tech and the life sciences boom we've seen in recent years. And then the last thing I just want to touch on before we get to some questions is the Governor's Council, because that is an important part of the Lieutenant Governor's job. The Lieutenant Governor chairs the Governor's Council. So I know you all know what it is, but a lot of people ask, well, what's the Governor's Council? The Governor's Council is a group of elected officials in our state that confirm all judges appointed by the governor. I think, frankly, that this institution and the Lieutenant Governor's role in that institution has been underutilized in recent years. As chair of the Governor's Council and working on judicial nominations, I would prioritize our criminal justice reform priorities when confirming judges. I worked on 2 Supreme Court nominations when I worked for President Obama, for Elena Kagan and Sonia Sotomayor. I'm a Harvard Law graduate, and I'm the vice chair of the Senate's Judiciary Committee right now. And I believe that we are ready and that I will make a priority focusing on criminal justice reform in our confirmations and also promoting more diversity on the bench in the state. And we need diversity in every sense. We need more racial diversity in our judges. We need more gender diversity. We also need more geographic diversity. We can't only have judges from the fancy zip codes in a handful of communities right in and around Boston. We need the full breadth of our state, including underrepresented neighborhoods in Boston, nominated to positions on the bench. And we also need diversity of experience. I'm going to make that a big priority. I think Governor Baker has made some good appointments for sure, but he's also, I think, appointed too many prosecutors. We need more public defenders. We need more public interest lawyers. We need more lawyers with environmental and advocacy backgrounds. So hope you give me some consideration, and would really love to just have a conversation, answer some questions.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jonathan. We've seen a lot of each other over the last
Yeah, nice to see you. As I always note, when it comes time for questions, if folks, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. You can write your question in the chat. You can use the raise your hand, hand raise function. whichever way to prefer in your questions. And so the floor is now open for questions. Any? I know we have people who have questions, so who's gonna? So one thing that I'll start.
I think Carol had her hand up.
Oh, okay, Carol.
Hi, Senator, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. So what is it about this particular position that excites you?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the question, Carol. I mean, it was really what I laid out. In particular about Lieutenant Governor, something that I really like about the role is if you're doing it right, you're really kind of in the engine room of state government. You know, you're in there kind of working with the different cabinet officials, working with the different agencies, working with state and local partners to get these big issues done. You know, just one example of where a lieutenant governor can make a real difference. Not to harp on rail service, but it's a good example is the Worcester-Boston rail connection that got up. There had always been a level of rail service between Worcester and Boston, but about 10, 12 years ago, it really ramped up dramatically, in part because the Obama stimulus brought record money to Massachusetts, and Governor Patrick turned to his lieutenant governor, Tim Murray, who was from Worcester, and said, you know, please work on expanding this service. There are now as many as 14 trains going back and forth between Worcester and Boston, and it's transformed the city of Worcester. You saw in the census results between 2010 and 2020, a 14% increase in Worcester's population in 10 years. To put that in perspective, the communities west of Worcester saw a loss in population, and that's helped Boston because it's allowed for some level of kind of escape valve on housing prices and on some of the issues and challenges you've had around gentrification and other issues around price increases. So it lifts all boats and it's cleaner and more efficient than the traffic on the Mass Pike. But that's just one example of ways that a lieutenant governor can work across different agencies, across different, you know, cabinet secretaries, across different components of government to get things done. And that's what excites me, because that's what I've done in the state Senate and done even, you know, locally in my home communities in Springfield and Chicopee, for example. Tomorrow morning, we're going to be cutting the ribbon on a new project, to put a new distribution center in Chicopee for the Food Bank of Western Mass, which again was a project that included federal money, state money, the city helped. There were private actors that participated, and everyone was kind of working together to get it done.
Thank you.
And I see Margaret, you have your hand up.
Oh, hey, Margaret.
Hi, how are
Is that
you?
Margaret McKenna?
Yes, Margaret McKenna.
Hey,
Yeah,
we're hiding in the corner.
I'm hiding in the corner. Oh, I'm trying.
We did a lot of work on civics together. Yeah.
Yeah. So it really is so much a question as a comment is, you know, the lieutenant governor does what the governor allows you or encourages you to do. So that's sort of a toss up. But just let me say, you would be an enormous loss in the Senate. You know, I don't know a lot of names in the Senate or the House, but you are one of them that everybody knows because you've actually gotten things done. And, you know, here's the question is, you know, lieutenant governors don't often get things done, but you have gotten things done. And I have to say, congratulations, because it's hard to get things done in the state legislature in Massachusetts. And a lot of things are attached to you and your name. So, you know, you're a really effective legislator. And you would be a huge loss. That's all I'm saying, is I'm not saying you shouldn't be lieutenant governor, but I'm not sure how you replace you in the legislature, because there aren't too many of you who actually has something, moves it through, and it becomes something. So I don't know. You know, whoever, if you become the lieutenant governor, you better have a governor who utilizes you to your best degree. That's all I'm saying.
No, wow, Margaret, that was I think that was meant as a compliment.
It is meant as a compliment. It is
Uh,
meant as a compliment. Yes.
Well, I appreciate the comment, and yeah, we have done a lot of work together. I mean, the civics bill, just as an example for people that might not be familiar with this, Margaret was very involved in with a group of advocates that were working to create a new civics requirement for our public school curriculum, including an experiential learning requirement, which is very important. It's been delayed a bit, obviously, because of COVID and everything that's been happening with the schools, but it's going to get back on track. And we've been working with DESE on that. So, and we're going to try to get some funding, in this budget to help build that trust fund out. But I appreciate that. I'm going to challenge the premise of the question, though, or the comment, which was that, a lieutenant governor can't get things done. I would just gently push back on that and say, I think I will have a very good and strong partner in whoever our next governor is. And, I'm excited to work with either Sonia or Maura, two people I really admire and respect a lot and have worked with a lot. I've worked really closely with Sonia in 4 terms together in the Senate. And I mentioned the Narcan bulk purchasing I did with Attorney General Healy, but I saw Beata on, a project we had worked on together, which was the Student Loan Borrower Bill of Rights. Was something we worked very closely with the Attorney General's office on, which is a new Chapter 93A consumer protection for 800,000 student loan borrowers in Massachusetts, which we work hand in glove with the Attorney General's office on implementing. So I think I'm not going anywhere. Don't worry.
Will, I see your hand up.
Hi, I'm 18. I'm in college right now, and I was just wondering. So obviously, I use the T a lot, and I was just wondering, like, obviously, I know the lieutenant governor isn't like directly in charge of this, but there's definitely some sway with like public transport. I was just wondering, like, what your like stance is, because I know Michelle Wu has talked a lot about like free or at least reducing the price of the T. So I was just wondering what you thought about that.
Yeah, no, Will, I really appreciate that comment. And, and Jonathan and I have talked about this a lot over the years. You're not going to find a bigger transit or public transportation advocate than me. Obviously, I'm in Western Mass, so, I haven't been as sort of intimately involved with the issues around the MBTA, but I'm a big champion. When I spent 7 years in Cambridge, didn't own a car, and was a frequent Red Line user, used the T to get around when I was there. We've got to invest in public transit, and we've got to invest in the MBTA. And I think one of the things I would also say is, unfortunately, there's been a dynamic in our state that pits kind of T riders against everybody else in the state, right? And I think that that's a false dynamic. And I think one of the perspectives I can bring as a Western Mass legislator who's also a champion of public transit is that we actually need to be working in cross purposes. I've supported, all of the significant T funding votes and MBTA improvement plans that have come in front of me. And I've asked, our Boston legislative delegation to support my efforts, for example, around regional transit authorities. I have the PVTA in Western Mass, Pioneer Valley Transit Authority. 2/3 of the riders of the PVTA are people of color. 2/3 are low income, and more than 60% have no alternative to the PVTA, meaning they don't have a car or any other way to get around at all. If the ride goes away, and it's a struggle every year. Frankly, there's a fire drill every year around getting them just shoestring budgets to keep operating. So, I think we need a more robust voice, and Mayor Wu has changed the debate, frankly, around public transit, and I would be a partner to her in that. So, for example, like making our RTAs free in connection with the MBTA, I think is a way to bring the whole state on board, right, to this idea that we're going to have, low cost, very high quality public transit. I know it's probably rambling a little bit, but I wanted to give you a sense of my, my full thinking on it.
No, great to hear the public transport. Very good that you're such a advocate for it. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I think if you have time for, I can see if there's any one final, okay, Andrew, I'll have one quick final question, and then we'll kind of close out, applause, and bring up the next speaker. Andrew.
Thank you, Senator. Good to see you. So one of the things you meant, one of the things about the LG's office is it does have sort of limitations in its role. So are there any changes to the role that you would advocate for? Maybe a statutory change or to expand the office a little bit?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, it's probably not my role if I'm in there to try to change the law to bring more power to myself. What I will say is that at the end of the day, government jobs are they're what you make of them, and they're about collaboration at their core, right? I mean, I've learned this in the Senate. A state senator is one of 40, who's one of 200 in a legislature, who's one of 1/3 of a branch of government. Who also then has to coordinate and cooperate with local governments and the federal government and on and on. So, a lot of the role and frankly, the ability to move an agenda through a role relies less on the kind of, pure legal or constitutional authority of that office and much more around your ability to convene people around a common agenda, build, consensus and move an item forward. And, just to bring it back to Margaret's example, on civics, we worked on that over, how long was it, Margaret? I mean, 4 or 5 years. And we brought in, teachers, we brought in the state, we brought in a really impressive group of nonprofit leaders and private sector partners and foundations. And we kind of, Harriet Chandler, who's retiring now as the president emeritus of the Senate, like really helped us quarterback that. But it was a sort of iterative process of building the support and staying focused. And I think those types of traits are what I would bring to the lieutenant governor role, obviously operating under the direction and kind of vision setting that the governor is doing.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna say thank you so much for joining us. I'll say, can we get a round of Zoom applause, kind of for Eric Lesser for joining us. And if you can, I think it's already done in the chat. Just drop into the chat how people can find out more about your campaign, how to connect if they want to. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, no, it was so fun. And yeah, please keep in touch. And yeah, John from my team put all our contact info in, and I'll see everyone soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Happy caucus season as well. And I will bring up Bret Bero, who is our next speaker. Let me just kind of quickly go into.
I'm here, Jonathan.
Okay, great. Just wanted to confirm that one was you. I will spotlight you. We have 20 minutes per speaker. Take about 6 minutes or so. If you want to tell us a little bit about who you are, why you're running, and then we'll do some Q&A.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. So as you heard, my name is Bret Bero, and I'm running for lieutenant governor, and I'm running for a reason. As Massachusetts comes out of its third wave of COVID, we're at an inflection point, and the decisions we're going to make in the next administration will define the character of the Commonwealth for our next generation. And while many see problems, I also see opportunities. But to get there, it will take us building a team of diverse individuals with diverse skills and experiences. I believe the lieutenant governor and the experience that person brings to the office should complement, not duplicate, the skills and experiences of our gubernatorial candidate. My background is distinctly different from the other candidates in this race. As a small business owner, I understand the importance that small businesses have in the economies of our forgotten towns and our gateway cities. And frankly, the state doesn't do much for small businesses or entrepreneurs looking to create businesses. And we need to do more if we really want our economic equality and justice to be spread throughout the Commonwealth. Our communities of color, our LGBTQ, women, our gateway cities, they all are underrepresented in the entrepreneurial and small business space. And small business is 45% of our total workforce. And since in our gateway cities and our forgotten towns, there's really no big industry moving out to them, if we want economic growth there, it has to come from supporting small businesses. I was on the board of the largest environmental testing company in North America for the better part of a decade. So I know that climate change is both real, an existential threat, but also an opportunity for Massachusetts. If you look at what's causing climate change in Massachusetts, our leading source comes from transportation. So as I'm sure Senator Lesser says, and I concur with, we need to have mass transit become a more prominent piece of our transportation model. And in a perfect world, with electrified trains and regional bus systems. But longer term, we also need to move to become a leader in the renewable and alternative energy industry. We have a wonderful opportunity with two deep water ports, New Bedford and Fall River, to be a leader in offshore wind. And we have to seize that opportunity because frankly, we can't wait as a planet to implement these as time takes hold. There's a short window for getting things done. As the son of first-generation college students with a wife who's an occupational therapist in one of the Metro West school districts, and as a member of the Babson College faculty, I know that education is the path to a better station in life, regardless of where you're starting from. I also know that we're about to have a brain drain of teachers. They're as burned out from COVID as our medical professionals are. And so we need to be able to step up if we want to maintain the educational excellence that Massachusetts is known for. I would even go one step further and say it's incredibly important for us to make the job of a teacher more than just a calling. Right now, my wife, I watch her work all hours of the day. And I got to tell you, she's putting in way more hours than she's being paid for. And she's not an exception to the rule. Almost every public school teacher is that way. So we need to do better. And when we talk about education, we're not just talking about K through 12. We're talking about vocational schools. We're talking about pre-K. We're talking about community colleges. And we're talking about our state college and university system. While others tout their experience at the highest levels of government, I'm proud to have served at the lowest level of government. I served on the Town of Carlisle Finance Committee and also an ad hoc revenue enhancement committee that we founded, because I know that your local government is where most citizens access their government services. My parents, my kids, my grandkids all live in Massachusetts, and I can see the generational divides that are opening up. Our super seniors and our seniors are on a fixed income. And as inflation starts to raise its head, as housing costs continue to escalate, it's hard for many of them to remain in Massachusetts. By the same token, our younger families are struggling to find housing that's affordable. And this is particularly true for those living at or below the poverty line, or even below a living wage. And the simple fact of the matter is, it's not just housing. It's access to quality and accessible daycare. My daughter has 2 children. I have 2 grandkids. And she's made the decision that she has to stop working because her salary doesn't pay enough for her to put both of her kids in daycare. And so that impacts her heavily. And I think it impacts a lot of the youth. Finally, as somebody who's dealt with both COVID and cancer personally in 2021, I know that healthcare is a basic human right that should be available for all. I also know as a small business owner that that's not a socialist agenda, that's a capitalist agenda. When I owned my small business for over 20 years, my healthcare costs for the employees never went up less than 20% a year. That's unsustainable. And my sister lives overseas in England and they have a national health system. So our healthcare model is driven heavily by the insurance industry. We can do better. This next election is not about our personal political ambition. I have no intention of ever running for another office, be it governor, senator, congressman. I'm running for lieutenant governor because I believe the unique challenges that confront Massachusetts align well with the skill set that I would bring. And I believe that we have an opportunity to build a new foundation for the future now that we're going to have a Democrat in the corner office. And so I'm running for lieutenant governor because I think Massachusetts can do better. I'd appreciate your support at the caucuses, through the convention, and all the way through the primary. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have on any subject other than the Red Sox, because I don't understand what they're doing.
Thank you so much. And then again, as I noted before, the floor is open for questions. If you have a question, use the hand raise function, just unmute yourself and ask it, or drop it into the chat. Any questioners? And I can see the question if nobody else raises their hand. Going once. I'll ask on my own. So one of the roles of the lieutenant governor is chairing kind of one body that deals with liaising with local governments in Massachusetts. What do you see as the role of the state government to play in helping kind of progressive policy happening at the local level? Like we've here in Boston, for instance, with Michelle Wu, we've seen like the free bus pilots that the city is doing here, and also things that she wants to be able to do on housing that require state approval. What do you see that relationship, and what role the lieutenant governor can have?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. I'm happy to answer it. Let me just preface the remarks by saying the progressive mass progressives had a survey that they sent to us. And I know I've completed 45 pages on that, and it's public record. I encourage you to go look at it. It's actually, I wrote all the answers myself. I don't know how many of the other candidates did that, but as somebody who is not a politician, I thought it was important that I understand where I stand on the issues. So I wanted to share my thinking with you. So the answer to your question is very clear. First of all, the role of lieutenant governors is what you choose to make it. I've always led in my career from the front, right? I believe that the way that you help is as you get out in the field. Now, there is a role of establishing the city on a hill, if you will, in terms of setting the ideals of what we stand for and the policies we believe. But the implementation doesn't come from the State House. It comes at the local level. And the lieutenant governor has an incredibly important role to play in getting out throughout the Commonwealth and working with the local leaders in the communities to actually implement stuff. I know when I was on the finance committee, I would go to regional sessions where a number of the finance committee members and selectmen and others would meet and talk about the issues that we were having and what help we needed. And we'd try to reach out to the state rep or the state senator. And it was okay, but there was really kind of, it was a passive sort of action. I think it should be more active, particularly on some of those critical issues that we confront. I think the lieutenant governor should be going out. I don't think they should spend more than a day a week at the State House. I believe 4 days a week. They should be out in the field talking to the citizens, the community leaders, and actually making things happen. And the final point I'll say on this is one size doesn't fit all. The needs on the Cape are different from the needs from Cambridge, are different from the needs from the Metro West, and then from Central Mass and Western Mass. And I think we have to develop solutions that work for each part of the state, not a one size fit all.
I see either Harold or Marianne or both with the question, so feel free to unmute.
Still muted.
I'm on mute. Okay, got it.
Yes.
So again, thank you so much for being here. It's very interesting.
Happy to be here.
Meet you directly. And an issue I've been very sensitive about over the years. I never got a response to it adequately. But yesterday morning, being the diligent husband that I am, I went out and cleared the car off so Marianne can go to work.
Yep.
And while I was out there, this relatively young man, maybe 40-ish, came over to me and said, "When you're done, can I borrow your shovel? Because I just need a job." And we started chatting, and he said to me, when he was a younger person, he made a mistake and joined a group of older people and was incarcerated.
Yep.
He said he bears with him the stigma of Corey for the rest of his life. And that stigma means that he can really just not get a job.
Right.
Or the place we live in a wonderful co-op here in downtown Boston. My goodness, if you have any stigma of Corey, they will simply not approve you.
Yeah.
My question is, can you help me think about this a little more clearly? Is there anything, seemingly it's a stigma that is unjust in a society that we live in, that somehow we should be able to find a solution that one is not ruins one's life from a mistake you made when you were 20 or 22 or whatever it would be.
Right.
So I wonder if you can respond to that in some way, bring me some relief, or clarity at least.
Yeah, look, and so it's a very real problem. I get it, right? And it's also an interesting problem because what we consider crimes at one point in time may not be crimes at another point in time. You know, if we're talking about, for example, cannabis and marijuana use, man, you know, when I was a kid in college, Reefer Madness would play, and I will say my friends would get high while they were watching it and laugh at it, right? And yet I had a friend that was arrested for driving a car that had some in it that he didn't know was in it. It was a small amount, a little baggy, but yeah, you know, it went on his record and it stuck with him. And, you know, I just think that I always tell my kids, the consequence should fit the crime, right? You shouldn't have to pay a consequence bigger than the crime was, particularly when they're youthful mistakes. You know, stuff should age out. Now, I get it. If you're doing a school shooting and okay, that's different. But for little things, I think it's incumbent upon us to try to rectify that, because the reality is all of us have done stupid things. Many of us got away with some of the things that we shouldn't have gotten away. And those that didn't, and we know that there's absolutely a certain level of racism and et cetera in the judicial decrees that are handed down and the punishments are there. I think we need to overcome that. The challenge is that's not an easy process to do. I think there's two ways of viewing it. First, solving the problem going forward. The first rule of hole digging is when you're in a hole, stop digging. Let's stop continuing to do that. Let's be better. And some of that comes from appointing judges who are not just prosecutors, but are people who come from the communities where the people have come from that are being incarcerated, right? And so let's let somebody who's walked a mile in their shoe decide. The second piece of it is going back retroactively. And I think that people that have pulled themselves up from a situation that they got themselves into deserve recognition for that. I would go so far as to say that it should time out on your record and time out of Corey too, right? And again, I'm not talking about mass shooting. I'm talking about things that are reasonable. So I think if we were smart about that, look, this doesn't take rocket scientists. It takes political will to do it, to say, look, people made mistakes, but, you know, I grew up in a religion that, you know, we're all human. We all make mistakes. It's part of the condition of life. The challenge is overcoming it and having some level of forgiveness for people. So as long as we're not talking about violent crimes, then I think there's a wonderful opportunity for us to do better and be better. And not that I'm governor, but if I were, you know, I would basically, anybody who, just to pick one, cannabis, right? Anybody who's convicted of cannabis, complete pardon, right? Void it from their record.
Yeah, very good. And those who committed lesser crimes, maybe
Yeah.
indiscretions with a robbery or something, give them a time limit, 3
Right.
or 4 years or whatever it is, and then they serve the time and they, yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your sensitivity, because it really
Not a
is-
problem.
I see a question from Will.
Hi, I know you already mentioned about like climate change. I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on like states specific solutions that can like, because I know like obviously the national government's very different than state and for local. So I was just wondering if you talk more about like ways you view this, like you believe the state could like tackle like climate change within itself.
Yeah, and I know I have to go after this question. I apologize for that. But let me say it two ways. It is absolutely true on the one hand that one state acting by itself cannot reverse climate change. And on the other hand, it is absolutely our job to be a leader in addressing climate change, a thought leader in coming up with new ways to address it, but also, you know, a leader in promoting policies that encourage conservation, encourage switching from diesel and fossil fuels to electrified, to adopting the use of alternative and renewable energy sources. I think all of that's critical. There is no magic wand to make it happen. It is a question of political leadership. I was on the board of Test America, the largest environmental testing company, and I know that we were responsible for monitoring the spill of oil from the BP Deep Horizon. And by doing that, we were able to help companies sue them and hold them accountable. And I think that is part of what state government needs to do, is hold the people that are violating accountable. And I know that there's a recent deal done where we could have gone to solar and renewable, and instead the energy companies wanted to maintain fossil fuels because it's cheaper. Okay, I get it's cheaper in the short term, but it's an existential question. We have to do better going forward. So Jonathan, I apologize. I'm going to have to run on you guys. Thank you so much for having me. And again,
No worries. Thank you so
my-
much for joining us.
I'm going to have Frank pop into the chat information for contacting me if you have any questions going forward.
Sounds good. And can we get a round of applause for Bret? Yeah, thank you again for joining us. I just let in our next speaker, which is Salem Mayor Kim Driscoll. Mayor Driscoll, thank you for joining us. I will put you on spotlight in one moment. Whenever you're done, whenever you finish connecting, I'll put you on spotlight. Okay, there you are. Okay, so I'll put you on spotlight. You can take 20 minutes. I want to tell people, take about like maybe 6 minutes. Tell us who you are, why you're running, all of that, and then time for Q&A.
Great. Hey, everyone. How are you? I'm Mayor Kim Driscoll. I'm a candidate for Lieutenant Governor, and I'm really grateful to be with you. I'm looking forward to sharing with you a little bit about my background, why I'm enthusiastic about this race, but also I'm grateful to be able to hear from you. I'm hoping this can be an exchange of ideas. I'd love to know more about what's on your mind. And I'm coming to you hot off the school committee meeting where we were talking about masks and whether we're going to be going mask optional soon. So I'm fired up. Again, I'm Kim Driscoll. I'm the mayor of Salem. A little bit about my background. My dad grew up in Lynn, and he was a chef in the Navy. He met my mom, who was a native of Trinidad, while he was in service. He's a career Navy man, and we moved around a lot when I was young, lived on both coasts, born in Hawaii. I came to Salem to go to college, and I fell in love with the city and fell in love with my husband, Nick. He is a second-generation union bricklayer. We like to say he's putting his political science degree to good use, building in Boston and lots of other cities and towns in the region. Together, we've raised 3 children here, Delaney, Eilish, and Nicholas, and we feel fortunate to be part of a really inclusive and welcoming community. I've worked in local government for just over 2 decades. I worked for the city of Chelsea as they came out of receivership, first as their chief legal counsel and then as their deputy city manager. And that experience early in my professional career really taught me the value of good government and frankly, who pays the price when there are failures in leadership, usually the folks who are most vulnerable in a community. I was proud to be part of a team at Chelsea City Hall who helped restore confidence and helped build back that city. And Chelsea will always have a really special place in my heart. Seeing a need for action in my own hometown of Salem, I ran for mayor, aimed at tackling some of the financial challenges here. I always felt like Salem had made 2 steps forward and 1 step backward, and saw an opportunity to come in and make government more open and transparent and really put Salem on the map. I've been humbled to be reelected 5 times, and along the way, Salem's become a hip, historic destination for both visitors and residents alike. We are now the 3rd most visited destination in Massachusetts, a key part of our local economy. We've also been able to open up our finances, make them way more transparent, been in a position to improve city services and make historic investments in parks and schools and infrastructure. The value of good governing when you're doing things the right way is you get to take on some of the sexy work as well. Mayors like me have been on the front lines, I think, not only throughout this pandemic, but frankly, always. These are jobs where there's no hiding. And we've been in front of some of our most urgent fights, from COVID response and recovery to race equity issues, to the climate crisis, trying to strengthen our public schools, and most assuredly in our community, working hard to make housing more affordable to the people who live here. What we do locally has a big impact on the Commonwealth, and how the Commonwealth interacts with cities and towns has a big impact on what happens locally. It's very much a symbiotic relationship. I know and understand the challenges that communities face, and it's a language I speak and one that I love. As we enter this next phase of the pandemic, I really feel cities and towns across this Commonwealth are going to need a strong state partner, not just a liaison, but somebody who understands the challenges on the ground, whether it's trying to bring back our schools following this pandemic, where kids have been some of our biggest victims, or trying to address those much needed community challenges, from the climate crisis to affordable housing, to trying to address transportation and mobility needs within our communities. These things happen on the ground in cities and towns. It's not just a partnership, it's a real commitment to tackle these most challenging issues in our Commonwealth. I think there's a lot at stake. I don't see us going back to the way we did things before. I don't think we're going to be doing things exactly the way we are now. It's still pretty chaotic. But as we transition to this next phase, we're going to need folks to operationalize plans. And the good news from my perspective is we're going to be able to do it with resources. The state's got historic surpluses. We've got federal dollars. I think there's an opportunity for us to not necessarily have a scarcity mindset as we tackle some of the challenges we've had. And I'm a city where we have taken action. We've expanded pre-K, something that we should be doing throughout the Commonwealth. If Alabama can put every 4-year-old in a high quality pre-K experience, I'd like to think Massachusetts can too. We've looked at how we can improve mobility and functions here. We've got a Salem Skipper rideshare service that's given 40,000 rides, paid for with cannabis revenues, that helps cut down on congestion and provide a way for our most vulnerable members of our community to get in and around to medical appointments and the grocery store and work. These are programs that I've operated here. I put together dozens of budgets, really had to say no a lot, understand how to prioritize, and to operationalize plans and bring people together. I'll close with this. I had a group of Cub Scouts in my office last week, and they were earning some badges, talking to them about local government. And they asked me, what do I like about being mayor? And I told them what I tell everybody who asks me that question. I get to work on issues that matter and make a real impact. It's that same drive, that same value, and frankly, that same sense of urgency that has me interested in being lieutenant governor, getting to work on issues that matter and make a real impact. As mayor of Salem, I've not only helped create a vision for our community, but brought people together to achieve it. And I'm proud to be part of the Get Stuff Done wing of government. We know that there's an opportunity to move our Commonwealth forward. It's going to take action in our cities and towns across all corners of the Commonwealth. I'd be honored to sort of hear from you, what's on your mind. Thrilled to have your support in this race. I think we have a chance to make history by not just electing one woman to the corner office, but electing two. And I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get to work. Love to talk with you more about the things that are on your mind and what keeps you up at night and things that you're interested in knowing more about me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And as I noted to folks before, if you have a question, use the hand raise function, drop your question in the chat, or feel free to just unmute and ask your question yourself. Margaret.
Mayor,
Hi, Margaret. How are you?
good, how are you?
Well, it's not boring in local government these days, and I've
No, not boring, not boring. So, I think people would pretty much say you've done a great job in Salem. Really revived the city in so many ways, done a great job. I know investing and supporting Salem State College and partnering with them about employment, workforce stuff. You're the boss. So what about moving from being the boss to be supporting the boss?
Yeah, I love that.
You thought it out that.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think that the great part about being lieutenant governor is you get to work with a great governor to achieve an agenda. I guess I should say there's not only one team player in the race right now. I played hoop in college as well. I know what it means to be a really good teammate. In fact, I think those skills help me in this job and just about every job I've had every single day. Nothing I've done in Salem, I've done alone, right? It's really about convening people together, our nonprofits, our private sector, our public sector partners like Salem State and our hospitals and our museums to create a North Star and go after it and get it. So I think the lieutenant governor has as much authority as the governor gives them. And I'm looking forward to being an asset and a partner to whoever is governor to roll up my sleeves and help. And I think because you're a mayor, you get to do a lot of different things, from schools to housing to trying to make your community greener. So I really feel like I could be a utility player in helping any of those areas, but certainly most assuredly, I speak the language of cities. And when our cities are working well, our Commonwealth is doing well, particularly gateway cities, diverse communities like mine that have been centers of regional economies that need assistance support from the state and can be leveraged to do so much more. So I can give orders and I can take orders, and look forward to partnering with our next governor to achieve, not only a democratic future, but one that has the democratic values that I think we all hold so dearly. And hope you're well, Margaret.
Any other questions that folks want to ask? And again, feel free to drop questions in the chat, to raise your hand, or to just unmute. Ben and or Jane.
I just wonder if there are things that you think that this current administration, the governor or the lieutenant governor, could have done better, or if there are things you agree with them on doing.
Sure, that's a great question. I do think we've had strong relationships with cities and towns, community leaders, and the current administration. I'd even say the administration before that as well. I was mayor when Governor Patrick and Lieutenant Governor Murray were there. And so I do think there's a recognition that we need our communities working and working well, and that they need not just assistance, not just somebody on the other end of the phone, but a true partner in that effort. I think some of the areas where I wish we could do more, it does feel like at times there's an inspiration gap. When you think about transportation, Salem has the busiest commuter rail station in the MBTA system, #1 per stop. And in fact, this line, it's the Newburyport, Rockport, Ipswich line, is the biggest line in terms of volume of ridership. We need to have this line electrified, right? Not only because it would improve train service, the amount of trains that could come in and out, cut down on headways. It's so critical for how we're going to approach climate change. We knowing how much greenhouse gas emissions come from our transportation network and how many single occupancy vehicles we have on the road. It doesn't feel like we have a real plan to do that. And even a recognition that we're going to invest in things now that you're not going to cut the ribbon on in 4 years. Like that's the reality. I'm mayor of a city that's almost 400 years old in 2026. And we are thinking about what kind of community we want to be in 2026. What's the kindergartner who's starting school then, hopefully a 4-year-old starting school then, is going to expect? What's the high school graduate in 2026 going to graduate into their community? And how do we do the backwards planning to achieve that? I'm not going to be mayor, and many of the people who are in the seats and senior staff or in positions of leadership won't be here at our institutions. But how are we putting a North Star out for what we want to achieve by that point and looking at it as though we are truly stewards and need to prepare for the next generation to benefit? So in my mind, there are some inspiration gaps around transportation, around how we think about, economically, education, as a community that has seen rapid changes. Your high school, and frankly, high schools in Boston and communities across this Commonwealth look a lot like the way high school looked in 1970 and 1980 and 1990. And yet our students learn much differently now. And they're going into a world where, frankly, this is going to drive a lot of what the economy does. How do we think about having our state not necessarily be an auditor or only an auditor, but also be a partner in preparing that next generation of young people who are entering into a workforce that's going to look a lot different. In my mind, there's a lot that I think has worked well for cities and towns with respect to the relationship we have with the administration, but there's some areas I think I would call them inspiration gaps relative to where we're going to make investments that are going to pay dividends long after you're in office.
Any other questions that folks want to ask?
I have one.
Yeah, Carol.
Hi, Mayor Driscoll.
Hi, Carol. How are you?
Good, thank you. You mentioned that you just came from a meeting dealing with mask policy in schools.
Yes.
So I'm wondering what actions you took in Salem that could be, I'm going to borrow your word, inspirations for statewide policy moving forward.
Sure. Are you thinking about COVID in particular, Carol?
I'm thinking about public health.
Yes. Okay. Terrific. Thank you. I really feel like our community was a leader with respect to responding to COVID. And I'll give you a few examples of that. We were one of the few school districts that started pool testing. I think there were only 3 school districts in Massachusetts who were testing students on a weekly basis as part of a pool testing model, because we were committed to getting our students in person and keeping them in person learning, knowing some of the damage that was done with virtual schooling, especially in a community like mine, very diverse populations, lots of folks who are service employees who need to get to work, who didn't have a work from home option, and certainly even kids who had a work from home option. That we did on our own. We didn't partner up with DESE. We didn't have the state coming in and saying, here's a menu of things that you can work on. We had to, frankly, partner with other districts, other parents who worked at the Broad Institute, find the way to put together the labs who are going to do this work. Going forward, we really need to have more preventative actions in place and commitments across districts and frankly across communities when we think about public health. The conversation we just had around masks, frankly, is not tied to a date, Carol. Like we want to make sure we're thinking about what are the metrics that are going to be important for us to point to when we're going to take masks down. And God forbid, if we start to see some of those metrics, case counts, hospitalizations, wastewater happening, going in the wrong direction, what would be the trigger to put them back in place? We think that's really important. We're all sick and tired of wearing masks, or many of us are, I should say. But that can't be the standard that we're using. So we were early adopters of wastewater. We were paying for that early on, recognizing it was such a predictor to help us in our community. And we're also a unique community. So we had to do things like shut down our October Halloween season. Those were hard decisions, but necessary, knowing what we knew about the virus. This past year, we were able to keep our Halloween season going, but put in place additional requirements for rapid testing before large events, making sure that people were wearing masks, things that other communities had already sort of taken down. So, I really do believe that we were an outlier in terms of wanting to keep our community safe, strong, and open. With a Board of Health who has now been dealing with some really horrible messages tied to our vaccine requirement. We did put in place a vaccine requirement and masking when we saw this Omicron surge, which almost single-handedly took our hospital down. Salem Hospital had the highest community case counts of any community hospital in Massachusetts. So we have been on the front lines of this thing, working hard to try and not only keep our community safe, strong, and open, but do so in a way that recognized the uniqueness of what was happening here. The last thing I'll leave with is it wasn't, lost on us that we also needed to stand up for our most vulnerable members of our community. In 2 weeks, we set up a regional quarantine site for our homeless population with 3 other communities. That happened in Salem. That's that chutzpah and that ingenuity and that innovation. We had to do it, so we did it. I'd love to see that carry forward when we're not so much in the pressure cooker of a COVID environment, but still have that commitment to try and get stuff done. And that's, I think you can pick up that I'm a real fan of local government because you get to solve those sorts of problems. And I think that we need that same sort of mindset, curiosity, and commitment to get stuff done at the state level as well.
Okay, what a wonderful answer. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Great. And any other questions that folks want to ask? I'll throw in one of mine if I don't hear anybody, but going once for questions. So I'll throw in one of mine. So Salem as a coastal part of our very coastal state is going to disproportionately at risk for the impacts of climate change and that are already happening. And well, as mayor, what are some of the things that you'd want to see Massachusetts do, especially to kind of strengthen our response to climate change, both from a mitigation perspective and adaptation perspective, whether new ideas, things being scaled up from what you've already done in Salem, and how the lieutenant governor can play an important role in that? Yeah, absolutely. Happy to help with that. Let me tell you a little bit about what we've done and then try and make that leap to how I think it can be scaled up. We are a coastal community. We work next door with our neighbor in the city of Beverly to put together a climate action plan. And I should also say Salem was one of the early adopters of green community status. We have converted our streetlights to LED. We have a municipal aggregation program that allows all ratepayers in Massachusetts, in Salem, to buy more renewable power at a lower rate than the national grid base rate. So we've done a lot of the low-hanging fruit. We've got municipal vulnerability plans, so we know where our toughest target areas are, both publicly owned and privately owned, that we need to be looking at for mitigation and adaptation. And there's a real recognition here that we're not going to seawall our way out of this problem, right? So what are the sort of behavioral aspects we need to do? Wanting to dig deeper in that, we did a joint climate action plan with the city of Beverly. It's called Resilient Together, knowing that we have a lot of similar characteristics and certainly share a coastline. That did 2 things that I think are really important and something I think every community should have is a climate action plan. One, it assessed all of our greenhouse gas emissions. Where are they coming from? What are the biggest threats that we have there? It's no surprise that it's buildings and transportation. And then it said, well, what's your to-do list going to look like, knowing some of these assessments if you're truly going to have a carbon-free community or carbon neutral community by 2050, sooner if we could. So it lays out a strong to-do list that starts with things like net zero zoning requirements. So we've got our first change within respect to land use, looking at, hey, every new development's going to have a net zero plan. We're doing municipal building assessments right now, looking at our mechanicals and efficiencies. How do we get our buildings more efficient to cut down on our greenhouse gas emissions? There's to-do lists around mitigation and adaptation as well. Some of that is living shoreline projects. We've done some innovative work recognizing that we're going to have shoreline erosion happening and additional storm surge.
we're not going to build a seawall everywhere. How do we accommodate the fact that some areas are going to flood, remove the things that are vulnerable, and put in place water-based plants, things like that, that can sort of be a buffer, but with an expectation that we're going to see sea level rise. The last thing I'll say is just on transportation. Salem's only 8 square miles. We need more housing. I mean, we are definitely a community that suffers from having all the housing that we need to meet market rate to affordable to highly vulnerable population. The biggest challenge we have is transportation and getting around and congestion. So we work hard to make sure that we have mobility options in our communities, so that you can be car optional in Salem. You don't necessarily have to own your own vehicle and cut down on that contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. We've had a rideshare service called Salem Skipper. It's given over 40,000 rides in just over its first year in operation, primarily serving individuals who don't own a car at all, who are, as I said, going to medical appointments and grocery stores and work. We also have a car sharing service. We subsidized a car share service, like you might see a Salem, like a Zip car, but in this case, it's called Get Around, and it lowers the cost for an hourly basis. So if you do need a car to go somewhere and you don't own a car, which we hope that you don't, you have an option. And then of course we have bike share and the infrastructure to go along with it. And for a city that's only 8 square miles, we really feel like these are meaningful ways to go car optional. Salem probably looks more like a European city. I think Boston does in many respects as well, than someplace out west. And they are way ahead of us. There's a lot we can learn from our European neighbors about how best to change both behavioral policies and put in place practices here. Those are just some of the examples. I think many of those, Jonathan, can be scaled up, especially around the transportation front, the connectivity that we want to have east and west, not just north and south to get into Boston. And certainly the other regions that aren't necessarily interested in going into Boston, but do need regional transportation hubs to cut down on congestion. We're using our cannabis revenues to help pay for our transportation. So we're trying to put that new revenue to good use, helping us address climate change goal and an equity issue as well in terms of who that's serving. Hope that's helpful.
Awesome. No, thank you. We do have to transition to other speakers, but I want to thank you so much for joining us this evening. And can you just drop into the chat if people want to follow up with you or get more information of the campaign? It might already be in there. I see it's already in there already.
We're
Can
way ahead of you.
I get a round of Zoom applause, real or Zoom applause for Mayor Kim Driscoll?
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Bach. Nice to see you as well.
We have a very quick update from Councilor Kenzie Bach, and then we'll bring up Shannon Liss-Riordan, candidate for Attorney General. So Kenzie, I'll bring you up quickly.
Hi everyone. Nice to be with you all. I am providing an interlude from the caucus and state election related entertainment. Just to register for everybody, I'm just looking for him. Jonathan, is the right person on the Zoom?
Is he still, Carol, do you know is David still on here? I don't think he is.
Hold on.
Okay.
Okay, well, listen, guys.
It's recorded anyway, so
I will quietly preview for you all that we've done a special city council resolution to honor David King for his recent 94th birthday. So we're very excited about this, and he'll get the physical copy of this. But I think maybe, Jonathan, I should leave my dramatic reading to, the next meeting or something when David is actually here to be honored. But I know that more seriously, I think, well, I'll make remarks next time, but David is obviously a hugely valued part of the Ward 4 community and many of the overlapping communities in the district that I represent. So we wanted to give him a shout out. So I'll be speaking briefly about him tomorrow at the council meeting as well. So thank you, Jonathan.
Awesome, thank you.
And and special thanks to Carol Lasky also for marshaling feedback and thoughts and edits and stuff on the resolution. We really appreciate it.
Also, kind of like shout out to the Seagulls and to Janet for help with that as well.
Thank you so much for doing this. It's just wonderful. Means a lot.
We're very happy to. He's one of a kind.
Yes, he is.
Awesome. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Happy to.
And then Shannon, are you here?
I am here.
Awesome. And then move the spotlight, and then quick thing, Kenzie. since I know that this is what you were just on, if you can drop in on the chat, the budget listening sessions link, if people want to go to one of the ones coming up. And I will put, Shannon, I will put you on to Spotlight. Thank you so much for joining us. So kind of, you have 20 minutes, take maybe like kind of 6 minutes or so, tell us who you are, why you're running, all of that, and then we'll have time for Q&A.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much, John, for inviting me. It's great to see you all tonight. My name is Shannon Liss-Riordan. I'm running to be your next Massachusetts Attorney General. My career has been defined by taking on big challenges and delivering big results for regular people. I have spent my entire legal career shaping and reforming the law to improve people's lives. For the last 20 years, I have represented working people. Back when I first started as a labor and employment lawyer, I got used to often being the only woman in the courtroom, and I'd be going up against all of these powerful lawyers representing corporate interests. And I never let it scare me. I put passion and dedication into everything that I did. And now, all these years later, I have been making national headlines, leading teams of lawyers, taking on some of the largest corporations in America. And time and again, we've beaten the odds. We've won against corporations like FedEx, Starbucks, Amazon, Uber, IBM, my alma mater, Harvard University, which I like to say I have proudly sued at least 4 times. I have represented everyone from waitresses to janitors to skycaps, construction workers, Uber drivers, strippers, and helped them recover hundreds of millions of dollars that corporate America stole from them. This work has changed industries across Massachusetts and throughout the country. I'm really proud to have devoted my career to fighting for the people, against the powerful, and winning. And that's what I plan to do for you as your next Massachusetts Attorney General. I know that the people of Massachusetts could really use a win right now. Income inequality is at an all-time high. Corporate bad actors are taking advantage of workers, of consumers, of our planet. We've got parents who have to make a choice between childcare and putting food on the table. Unions and the right to organize are under attack. The United States Supreme Court is on the verge of taking away nearly 50 years of reproductive freedom. The people need a champion. We need someone who knows how to use the legal system to break new legal ground, to push our system to be better, to enforce and reform our laws to better serve the people. And that is what I've been doing throughout my whole career. I have delivered for the people time and again, changing industries. I'll give you one example. Back in 2001, I started getting calls from wait staff who weren't getting all of their tips. These were hardworking people who paid the rent, they put food on the table, they supported their families by relying on the generosity of the public they served, but their bosses were sticking their hands in their pockets and taking away their hard-earned tips. And I knew that that was wrong. I looked into it and I found that there was this law that had been on the books in Massachusetts since about 1952, and it had never really been enforced, and it had, no one really knew about it. But I looked at that law and I thought, this law means that tips are for workers. So I took on that first case based on that law. Before I knew it, I was getting calls from all across Massachusetts, and I had sued just about the entire hotel and fancy restaurant industry across the state. It was not easy. The courts had never seen a case quite like that. And that first case I took on, I lost. But I didn't let that stop me. I knew that we were right. I kept fighting. And then the next case, I lost that one too. But then the next case I won, and the next case I won, and the next case after that, and the next case after that. And before we knew it, this string of cases had changed the service industry across Massachusetts, establishing the law that tips are for workers, not for owners. And then that success got replicated nationwide. And now there is not a hotel or a restaurant or airline or gig economy company that doesn't know that they better keep their hands off of workers' tips, because if they don't, I will come after them. In this area and many others, I have led the legal teams that have changed and enforced the laws for the better to enhance the lives of the people across Massachusetts. I know this is a really difficult time for a lot of people, but I think in difficult times like this, it's an opportunity for us to really forge a better future. Massachusetts has been a leader across the country in protecting workers' rights, but there is a lot more that we can do. And we can and we should be leaders on growing a fair economy, fighting institutionalized racism and discrimination, lifting the burden off working parents, protecting reproductive rights, and saving our planet. The role of the Attorney General is to be an advocate and a resource for the people, to lead the people's law firm and deliver meaningful change. That is what I have devoted my career to doing. I consider this race to be a job interview, and I'm asking the people of Massachusetts to consider my background, my skills, my experience, my passion, and my unparalleled record in delivering meaningful change when you are deciding who you want to be the next attorney for the people of Massachusetts. I am the only candidate in this race who has represented working people. I'm the only practicing lawyer. I have won the jury trials. I have won the appeals that have shaped our law to make it more fair for the people. I have been essentially a private attorney general for my whole career, and I'm ready to step up, take it to the next level with the power of the state behind me. I've been an activist lawyer, drawing on my roots as a women's rights activist and organizer, which I learned so long ago from the legendary Bella Abzug. I've been called the workers' champion, and now I'm ready to be Massachusetts champion. So my name is Shannon Liss-Riordan. I'm running to be your next Massachusetts Attorney General. I humbly ask for your support. And I am excited to hear what you have to say and answer any questions you got for me tonight. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then again, as I noted before, for folks with questions, you can use the hand raise function. You can unmute and ask your question directly, or you can drop your question in the chat. So who wants to ask the first question? I'll give it one. I'll Ben.
So thank you very much. You mentioned a few things that differentiated you from the other candidates. Could you list other areas that you would differentiate between the two other candidates that we know are running?
Well, like I said, I'm going to talk about what my experience is, what my vision is. Like I just described, I think this role is a role for an experienced practicing lawyer who knows how to use the courts, who knows how to use the legal system to improve people's lives. That is where I have been my whole career. And it's also an important opportunity to work with the legislature to get the laws passed and amended that will better protect workers, consumers, our environment. And being an on-the-ground lawyer and seeing how these battles play out in the courtroom have educated me. I know how laws work in practice. I know how the corporations skirt their obligations. I know where all the little traps and the tricks are. And I think that this experience I have puts me in the best position to know how to tackle these issues before us on multiple fronts. I have won cases fighting race discrimination across Massachusetts. I have gotten people jobs who had been denied their jobs because of their race, because of their sex, because of their disability. I have been out there fighting these battles. I know how to take on these corporations and the kinds of battles I've been fighting in the labor arena. I think they really translate into so many of the pressing areas that the Attorney General's office is called on to address, because I know that the tricks that are out there by corporate bad actors, they're not limited to what they do with respect to their workers. They're doing it with respect to their consumers. They're doing it with respect to our environmental regulations. And I think experience in hand-to-hand combat with them is going to come in really handy to take on the great work that Mara Healy has been doing and expand on it. And so I'm ready to take that on and to fight those battles and be a leader here in Massachusetts as well as across the country. I can coordinate. I've already been spending my career coordinating with attorney general's offices in other states, including California, New York. Like I mentioned, Massachusetts is and can be a leader. We have a lot to do here at home, and a lot of the battles we're fighting across state borders. And I'm used to taking on these big battles that are nationwide in scope. So I can see the local perspective as well as the broader nationwide perspective.
Awesome, thank you. I see Margaret.
Hi, Shannon. Margaret McKenna. Good
Hi,
to
Margaret. Good to see you.
I've talked to you, but not seen you. I just want to say, as a lawyer, but not really a lawyer anymore, I think it's important to understand the law. And it's also to understand the public policy part of the law. And I think people should understand those are two things and that you have both. So it's not just litigating, it's really understanding how the law can make policy. I think also, Shannon, I know Shannon because of one case. And that's because Shannon and her firm represented 9 Black police officers in Boston for 9 years for Zippo money, none. So they put their resources, their time, never knowing that they would get a penny out of this. And when I became the chair of the Boston Human Services, I wrote a letter to the mayor and said, drop this case. This is ridiculous. They kept appealing and appealing and appealing and appealing. And not that we made the difference, but Kim Janey finally, dropped the case. But I think what it shows is this is the kind of person in a firm who will do what's right without any money. There aren't too many of us around. There aren't too many lawyers around like that that don't know whether any money is ever going to show up on a case, especially for 9 or 10 years. And some of these guys, they weren't with the police force anymore. They were retired. They were, I just think it's an interesting, you're talking about national things. I'm just talking Boston, people we know, Boston's, our home. I just think it's important for people to know things like that. They're human beings involved that, who are discriminated against for years. And you just hung in there, which is, I think it's important for people to know that.
Thank you, Margaret. I really appreciate that. It really is true that I took on this line of work many years ago. I knew this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to law school to be able to have some concrete tools in order to make people's lives better. And I've had the privilege throughout my legal career of really getting to pick and choose my cases. And I've done the policy, I've made those policy strategic decisions just in deciding what areas to focus on and where to go after. So in so many ways, I really mean it when I say my career has been as a private attorney general. When I see an issue, my partner calls me, I know this is a little weird, but he calls me a pit bull with a chihuahua in its mouth because I just don't let anything go. So we've had many cases that have gone on for years and years, and you have to fight the fight. So I was very proud of that case that Margaret just described. I also, with my firm, fought for many years to challenge the state civil service system for hiring police officers and firefighters and using a civil service exam that discriminates against Black and Hispanic officers. I won that trial in federal court many years ago, about a decade ago or so, and then got Black and Hispanic firefighters and police officers hired across the state as those as a result of that case. I could go on forever about examples, but I just want to tell you about one other one. The janitorial industry is full of really terrible, bad actors. And I've taken on a whole series of these companies that have preyed on primarily immigrant workers by claiming that they were letting them become their own boss, getting the American dream, buying into the American dream, having their own business. They called them so-called franchisees, and they sold them what they said were franchises, but really what they were doing was they were charging thousands of dollars for these immigrant workers, many of whom didn't speak English, to do cleaning work, to scrub toilets in office buildings. And I was just appalled by that. And I took that on as a mission. And over the course of about 10 years, I built the cases, case by case by case, and ultimately got up to the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court and established the law and got the court to agree that in Massachusetts, it is illegal to sell a job. People get paid to do work. You don't have to pay to get work. And I drove these companies out of Massachusetts and opened up this work for corporations doing it the right way, that classify their workers as employees and give them all of the benefits and protections and privileges of employees. And so that's just another example of the type of battle that I've taken on and the type of tenacity that I will have as Attorney General. Because I've been the kind of lawyer who I take on issues that I see as important to helping people's lives. And so I feel like the Attorney General's office is the perfect opportunity and platform to be able to expand on this work. I've been doing this work at a firm with about a dozen lawyers that I lead. Imagine having the resources of the hundreds of lawyers in the Attorney General's office for me to be able to continue this critical work.
Great, thank you. And then Ryan.
Hi, Shannon. Thanks for joining us. Today, I mean, obviously everybody knows that the Sandy Hook families settled with Remington, which is the first time a gunmaker was held liable for a mass shooting. Do you see this as something that could be a template for action at the state level, and maybe not just related to mass shootings, but the everyday violence that actually takes many more lives, but doesn't get the same attention?
Yes, absolutely. And that's what I mean when I say that I think the work that I've been doing going against corporations that have been taking advantage of us all translates across different fields. That was an example of the legal system being able to use to get some measure of justice. I mean, it's not going to bring those poor kids back for us, but some measure of accountability for the manufacturers of these weapons. That's exactly the kind of work I've been doing. Going after these corporations. It's a playbook also on what Maura Healey has been doing, going after the pharmaceutical industry. That's exactly the kind of case that's ongoing, that I would be ready from day one to step in the shoes and take over that litigation and continue it. The same thing with the Exxon litigation that she's been doing for Exxon, who has been lying to the public about climate change. So I see the law as an extremely powerful tool to address many of these critical issues facing us. So there's enforcing the laws through these high power lawsuits that are my bread and butter, what I've been doing in my career. But then there's also working with the legislature and getting the laws passed and reformed that are needed in order to make progress on these critical issues.
Great, thank you. And does anybody have any other questions? And again, I'll say additional questions going once, additional questions going twice. Not hearing additional questions, I want to thank you so much for joining us. We get a round of Zoom applause. Zoom applause. And if you can join, I think it's already in the chat about how people can follow up if they want to learn more about you or your campaign or get involved. Awesome. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, John. It's so good to see you all tonight. Really appreciate the time. Take care.